In the bustling halls of Jefferson Middle School, where lockers clanged and students exchanged jokes and whispered rumors, there was a girl who didn't quite fit the mold. Her name was Emma Carter, and she was in 7th grade. While her classmates were obsessed with the latest fashion trends, social media fads, and weekend plans, Emma was absorbed in something far different: planes. Not just any planes, but fighter jets, the sleek, roaring machines that could streak across the sky faster than anyone's imagination. Emma's fascination wasn't subtle. Her notebook margins were crowded with detailed sketches of F-22 Raptors, F-35s, and vintage World War II aircraft. She labeled every part with precision: cockpit, afterburner, vertical stabilizers, radar arrays, so that anyone glancing at her work would know she wasn't just doodling. She read flight manuals the way other kids devoured comic books, absorbing the science of aerodynamics, thrust, and lift as if it were second nature. When a new Air Force documentary aired on TV, she'd watch it multiple times, pausing to note down maneuvers or cockpit protocols. Yet her peers didn't see brilliance, they saw a weird kid. At lunch, whispers trailed her like shadows. "Look at Emma, still drawing planes," someone would snicker. "Who even cares about that stuff?" In class, when the teacher asked for volunteers, Emma's hand shot up instantly, brimming with curiosity and questions about physics or engineering principles. The other kids rolled their eyes. "Why do you always have to be so nerdy?" one classmate muttered under their breath. Emma pretended not to hear it, but it stung. Despite the teasing, Emma's passion was unshakable. It wasn't just about planes. It was about what they represented: freedom, precision, and mastery of something that seemed beyond reach. Every time she watched a jet tear through the sky, her imagination ignited. She pictured herself at the controls, executing perfect maneuvers, feeling the raw power of the engine beneath her hands. At home, her room was a miniature shrine to aviation. Posters of fighter jets adorned the walls, and shelves overflowed with model planes she had painstakingly assembled, each painted with meticulous care. Her parents, recognizing her dedication, supported her quietly. Her father, a former Air Force technician, often told her stories of pilots he had known, emphasizing discipline, focus, and courage. Her mother helped her gather books and resources, encouraging Emma to pursue her interests, even when the world outside didn't seem to understand them. School, however, was another story. In 7A, Emma was the kid who carried a ruler, a calculator, and a notebook full of plain schematics in her backpack instead of the latest smartphone or a trendy notebook. Group projects were particularly challenging. When assigned a science experiment about aerodynamics, she insisted on using proper wind tunnel data and flight simulations, while her teammates wanted to cut corners and rush through. The result: the experiment succeeded beyond expectations, yet the classmates only saw Emma, annoying know-it-all behavior. Lunchtime was the hardest. While the others formed tight-knit circles, Emma often sat alone, sketching planes or reading aviation magazines. Occasionally, a curious student would approach, asking questions about her work, but many of these encounters ended in ridicule, with the student quickly retreating after realizing Emma knew far more than they expected. Still, she persisted. She wasn't in it for popularity or approval. She was in it for the love of flight. Even the teachers occasionally underestimated her. In science class, when the teacher announced a unit on basic aerodynamics, Emma's hand shot up immediately. "What about supersonic flight and the effects of variable geometry on lift?" she asked. Some of her classmates laughed, whispering that she was overcomplicating things, but a few teachers smiled privately, recognizing the spark of brilliance in her questions. They encouraged her in subtle ways, suggesting extra reading or small science projects, planting seeds that would grow in the years to come. Emma's resilience wasn't born from ignorance of the world's judgments. It came from an inner conviction that she was destined for something extraordinary. She had a vision, a life in the cockpit of a fighter jet, serving her country with skill and integrity. That vision was her armor against the jeers and the laughter, the invisible shield that kept her moving forward while others doubted. Her fascination extended beyond sketches and reading. Emma began experimenting with small flight simulations on her computer, learning about navigation, maneuvering, and even basic aerial combat scenarios. She joined the school's science club and convinced the faculty advisor to let her present a project on flight mechanics, despite initial reluctance. On the day of the presentation, she demonstrated the principles of lift and drag using a homemade wind tunnel and scale models. While some classmates still whispered behind her back, a few peers were genuinely impressed, realizing that the weird kid had something remarkable to show. Even outside school, Emma's life revolved around aviation. Weekends were spent at local air shows, where she would watch pilots perform breathtaking aerobatics, scribbling notes and diagrams in a small notebook she carried everywhere. She became known among vendors and pilots for her enthusiasm and curiosity, often asking technical questions that impressed even the adults. At home, she recreated maneuvers in her flight simulator, logging hours of practice, learning control sequences, and even simulating scenarios that few seventh graders could comprehend. Despite all this, Emma remained humble. She didn't flaunt her knowledge to embarrass others. She simply followed her passion relentlessly. The ridicule she endured at school fueled her determination rather than dimming it. Every snicker, every whispered insult, every sideways glance became a quiet motivator, reminding her that she had to prove her own worth, not to the classmates in 7A, but to herself. By the end of the school year, while Emma's classmates remembered her as that plane-obsessed girl, there were subtle shifts happening. A few students began to approach her with questions, curious about her knowledge. Even the teachers began to recognize her as someone with extraordinary potential, not just a quirky student. And Emma herself, undaunted, focused, and determined, began to see that one day the laughter of 7A would be far behind her, eclipsed by something far more powerful: the roar of a fighter jet overhead, acknowledging the pilot who refused to give up. Emma Carter entered 8th grade with a quiet confidence that few of her classmates could recognize. The laughter from 7th grade had not disappeared entirely, but it had lost its sting. Over the summer, Emma had spent countless hours researching aviation history, reading biographies of famous pilots, and perfecting her flight simulator skills. Her notebooks were now filled not only with sketches of planes, but also with meticulously written notes on aerodynamics, navigation, and advanced flight maneuvers. While her peers were focused on gossip and pop culture, Emma's mind was occupied with trajectory calculations, jet engine performance, and the physics of supersonic flight. Her parents watched with pride. Her father, once a maintenance technician in the Air Force, began teaching Emma basic cockpit operations and flight safety protocols. They would spend entire afternoons on their driveway, launching model rockets and testing homemade gliders, turning every experiment into a lesson in patience, observation, and analysis. Emma's mother encouraged her academic pursuits, helping her build a personal library of aviation manuals, military history books, and flight simulation software. It was a rare household where science and imagination blended seamlessly, giving Emma the tools she needed to grow her passion into something tangible. At school, Emma started to find allies, small pockets of students who shared her curiosity and love of science. One of them, a boy named Malik, had a quiet fascination with coding and robotics. Together, they started a small aviation club, meeting in the library after school to work on projects ranging from paper airplane competitions to building mini drone prototypes. While the club remained small and somewhat secretive at first, the few members who joined were captivated by Emma's enthusiasm and depth of knowledge. She led the group with an unusual blend of humility and authority, never belittling anyone's questions, and always encouraging experimentation. Science fairs became Emma's proving ground. In 7th grade, she had been hesitant to present her first project, a detailed wind tunnel simulation, but now she approached it with deliberate confidence. Her 8th-grade project was ambitious, a scale model demonstrating how varying wing shapes affected lift and drag at high speeds. She included a computerized analysis using flight simulation software, detailing how each adjustment would theoretically impact performance. On the day of the fair, her display captivated visitors and judges alike. Teachers who had once shrugged at her questions now lingered, intrigued by her technical mastery and clarity of explanation. For the first time, Emma felt that the world was beginning to see what she had always known. She had something extraordinary to offer. But school life still carried its challenges. Some classmates remained skeptical, whispering about how weird it was that a middle schooler was so obsessed with fighter jets. Emma learned to tune out their comments, though not with bitterness, rather with quiet determination. She realized that their laughter was not a reflection of her abilities, but of their inability to understand them. This understanding, subtle but profound, shaped Emma's mindset. Every joke at her expense became a stepping stone toward resilience, a reminder that her path was different and required a different kind of courage. Outside of school, Emma's fascination with flight evolved into more practical experiences. Her father arranged for her to visit a small local airfield, where she observed private pilots conducting pre-flight checks and taking off into the morning sky. Emma was mesmerized by the coordination, precision, and discipline required to operate an aircraft safely. She absorbed every detail, asking careful, intelligent questions about weight distribution, engine performance, and navigation systems. The pilots, initially amused by her age, quickly recognized her seriousness. By the end of the visit, one even allowed her to sit in the cockpit of a small trainer plane while explaining the basic controls. The experience reinforced Emma's determination. She was not interested in fantasy. She wanted to fly, truly and competently, for real. Emma's passion began to intersect with her academics in profound ways. She excelled in math and physics, subjects that her peers found challenging or dull. Equations became more than numbers on a page. They were tools for understanding the world and predicting outcomes. In physics class, she built a model demonstrating Bernoulli's principle, showing how air pressure differences allowed airplanes to achieve lift. Some classmates were genuinely impressed, their earlier mockery replaced with curiosity and tentative respect. Emma, ever humble, simply smiled and encouraged them to try the experiment themselves, believing that knowledge was meant to be shared, not hoarded. Her teachers began to notice the change as well. Mr. Hawkins, her science teacher, pulled her aside one afternoon after class. "Emma," he said, "you have a mind for this more than I've seen in years. Have you ever considered looking at specialized programs for aviation? There are summer academies, mentoring programs, even scholarships for students like you." Emma's eyes lit up. She had heard of such opportunities, but she hadn't dared hope they were accessible to someone her age. That conversation marked a turning point. For the first time, she realized that her dreams were not only valid but achievable. Emma also began to understand the value of mentorship. She reached out to former Air Force colleagues of her father, emailing politely to ask about their experiences and advice for someone interested in military aviation. To her delight, many responded, offering guidance, book recommendations, and even invitations to visit bases and observe flight training exercises. These early connections became invaluable, giving Emma a realistic view of what it meant to pursue a career as a pilot: dedication, discipline, physical fitness, and a relentless commitment to learning. Meanwhile, her aviation club continued to grow. Students who were initially hesitant to join found themselves drawn to Emma's energy and knowledge. Together, they built small gliders, programmed basic flight simulations, and studied the physics behind real aircraft maneuvers. Emma took care to encourage every member, celebrating small successes and helping navigate failures. Through this leadership, she discovered another layer of her own abilities, not just technical skill, but the capacity to inspire and teach others. Despite her growing recognition and achievements, Emma never lost touch with her roots. She remembered the halls of 7A, the whispered laughter, the sideways glances, and the feeling of being misunderstood. Those memories fueled her, reminding her that the path to greatness was rarely smooth. She learned to embrace solitude as a source of strength and to turn doubt, both others and her own, into motivation. By the end of 8th grade, Emma Carter had transformed from the quiet, laughed, at kid in 7A into a determined young pilot in training, laying the groundwork for a future that was no longer a dream, but a tangible goal within reach. And yet, for all her accomplishments, the journey had only just begun. The challenges that awaited her would test not only her technical skills but her courage, resilience, and unwavering belief in herself. In a world that often underestimated young girls with big dreams, Emma was learning one fundamental truth: determination, knowledge, and persistence could lift her higher than anyone had ever imagined. High school began for Emma Carter with the same mixture of excitement and apprehension that most teenagers feel, but for her, the stakes were higher. Unlike her peers, whose concerns revolved around friendships, dances, and grades, Emma's focus was singular, preparing herself to one day fly in the U.S. Air Force. She entered Lincoln High School with her notebooks full of flight diagrams, her mind buzzing with calculations, and her heart set on a dream that many adults still dismissed as unrealistic for someone her age, and especially for a girl. The first semester was a crucible. Classes were more demanding, the academic pace faster, and the social dynamics harsher. Emma's peers were no longer just classmates. Some were older, more self-assured, and quick to point out her obsessions with fighter jets and military technology. When she enthusiastically explained the aerodynamics of a plane during physics class, a group of upperclassmen snickered behind their hands. "Seriously, Emma, do you ever talk about anything normal?" one muttered. Instead of retreating, she leaned into her studies even harder, finding solace in her projects and in the mentorship of teachers who recognized her potential. Her first major setback came during a summer application for a prestigious aviation program for high school students. Emma had spent weeks perfecting her essays, detailing her passion for flight, her long-term goals, and her commitment to serving her country. She submitted her application with hope, imagining herself stepping onto the flight line, learning from experienced pilots, and working hands-on with real aircraft. When the rejection letter arrived weeks later, Emma felt an unfamiliar sting. "We appreciate your interest," it read politely, "but we are unable to offer you a place in this year's program." Her heart sank. She had poured so much energy into this, only to be told she wasn't yet ready. Emma didn't let the rejection define her. She read the letter carefully, looking for lessons rather than excuses. She realized that persistence would be her greatest ally. If she wanted to achieve something extraordinary, she would have to endure disappointment, learn from it, and push forward with even greater determination. She spent the next weeks analyzing the program's requirements, noting areas where she could improve: physical conditioning, technical knowledge, and leadership experience. This approach, seeing setbacks as a roadmap rather than a dead end, would become a defining habit throughout her life. Academically, high school was no easier. Advanced courses in mathematics, physics, and computer science demanded hours of study beyond the classroom. Emma often stayed late in the school library, working through challenging problems while her peers left for social activities. She tackled complex topics like fluid dynamics, propulsion systems, and flight simulation algorithms, sometimes confusing even her teachers with her questions and depth of understanding. At times, this level of intensity made her feel isolated. Some students whispered that she was overcomplicating everything or trying too hard, but Emma reminded herself that excellence rarely comes without sacrifice. Social challenges compounded the academic ones. Friendships were tenuous, often strained by misunderstandings or envy. While a few classmates admired her dedication, others saw it as a threat to their own confidence. Group projects meant to foster collaboration frequently became sources of tension. Emma's insistence on accuracy and attention to detail clashed with peers who preferred shortcuts or minimal effort. She learned diplomacy, patience, and the ability to lead without alienating those around her. These interpersonal lessons, she later realized, were just as critical to her success as technical skill. Physical challenges loomed as well. Emma knew that becoming a pilot required more than intellectual ability. It demanded stamina, strength, and resilience. She joined the school's cross-country team and began a rigorous fitness regimen at home. Early mornings were spent running, doing strength exercises, and practicing core drills to prepare for the physical demands of flight training. Some days were grueling. She fell behind, tripped on uneven paths, and endured sore muscles. But each ache and setback became a reminder that she was preparing for a goal that required total commitment. Emma also faced doubt from her own family at times. While her parents were supportive, even they occasionally questioned the feasibility of her ambitions. "It's a tough path," her father said one evening, his tone gentle but cautious. "Very few make it all the way to becoming a fighter pilot, especially women. You need a backup plan." Emma listened respectfully but politely disagreed. Her mother, sensing her determination, quietly encouraged her. "You can prepare for everything, but don't let anyone else decide what you're capable of," she advised. Emma took the words to heart, understanding that even love and support sometimes require her to stand firmly on her own convictions. In spite of these obstacles, Emma continued to seek out mentorship. She applied to summer leadership programs, contacted Air Force veterans, and reached out to female pilots for guidance. Many responded warmly, offering advice, encouragement, and even small exercises to develop her skills. Some told her the truth. This path would be difficult, demanding, and often discouraging. But they also reminded her that persistence, resilience, and focus could overcome nearly any obstacle. Emma absorbed every word, turning challenges into lessons and rejection into fuel for improvement. By the end of her freshman year, Emma faced a particularly difficult moment. A major regional science competition approached, and she submitted a project she had spent months preparing, a flight simulation that analyzed different wing configurations for supersonic aircraft. On the day of the event, the judges praised her technical mastery, but criticized her for a perceived lack of presentation polish and collaboration with her teammates. Despite her accomplishments, Emma didn't win the top prize. It felt like history repeating itself. All her hard work, met with partial recognition but still overshadowed by expectations she hadn't yet mastered. That evening, Emma reflected on the year. She thought about the 7A hallway where students once laughed at her, the rejection letters that piled up on her desk, and the judge's feedback that left her questioning her abilities. And yet, she also remembered the glimmer of admiration in her teacher's eyes, the encouragement of mentors she had met, and the small victories she had achieved. Completing her first solo glider flight simulation successfully, mastering complex equations, and earning the respect of a few classmates who now sought her advice. Emma realized something profound. Challenges and rejection were not indicators of failure but markers of a journey in progress. Every setback, every skeptical glance, every harsh word was an opportunity to grow stronger, smarter, and more prepared for the future. She made a quiet vow to herself. No matter how many times she was turned down, misunderstood, or doubted, she would continue to pursue her dream with relentless dedication. By the time summer arrived, Emma had a renewed sense of purpose. She spent long hours at flight clubs, attended aviation workshops, and sought every chance to learn from real-world pilots. The rejection letters no longer hurt. They were reminders that she needed to keep learning, keep improving, and keep striving. And deep down, she knew that one day, the laughter and doubt of her peers would be replaced by recognition, respect, and perhaps even awe, as she proved that determination, intelligence, and courage could defy expectations. Emma Carter's high school journey had begun, and while the path was full of obstacles, she had discovered a crucial truth. Perseverance in the face of rejection, was not only a skill but a superpower. Every challenge she overcame brought her one step closer to the cockpit, one step closer to earning the call sign that would mark her as a pilot among pilots, and one step closer to proving to the world that the kid who had once been laughed at in 7A was destined for something extraordinary. The morning Emma Carter stepped onto the sprawling campus of the United States Air Force Academy, she felt a mixture of awe, nerves, and exhilaration. The towering buildings, perfectly aligned parade grounds, and the distant roar of jets practicing maneuvers in the sky were nothing like the middle and high school classrooms she had known. This was a place where dreams of flight became reality, where ambition met discipline, and where the price of failure could be measured in sweat, pain, and relentless effort. Emma was ready, or so she hoped. The first weeks were a baptism by fire. Cadets were woken before sunrise, pushed through grueling physical training, and immersed in a regimented schedule designed to forge resilience, discipline, and teamwork. Emma quickly learned that her knowledge of aerodynamics and aircraft systems, while impressive in school, was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Physical strength, endurance, mental stamina, and the ability to follow strict protocols were just as crucial. In the gym, Emma discovered muscles she hadn't known she needed. Early morning runs along the academy's trails left her lungs burning and legs trembling. She fell behind on more than one occasion, tripping over uneven terrain or struggling to keep pace with her fellow cadets. The instructors were unforgiving, barking orders that left no room for hesitation. "Cadet Carter, pick it up. You'll need more than brains to survive in the cockpit," one shouted during a particularly brutal drill. Emma bit back the frustration rising in her chest and pushed herself harder. Each lap, each push-up, each drop of sweat became a quiet declaration. She would not quit. Academically, the challenge was just as fierce. Courses in aerodynamics, propulsion systems, aviation technology, and military strategy demanded intense focus and mastery. Emma had always excelled in physics and mathematics, but the academy required her to apply theory under extreme pressure. Calculations had to be precise, systems analyses flawless, and decisions made instantly. In simulation labs, she learned how to react to emergency protocols, instrument failures, and complex navigation scenarios, all while under the critical eyes of instructors who demanded perfection. Social dynamics were another battlefield. Unlike high school, where she had been teased and underestimated, the academy's cadets were all highly capable, driven individuals. There was no room for complacency, and Emma quickly realized that camaraderie was earned through effort, respect, and reliability. She made allies cautiously, observing how others handled stress, how leaders emerged naturally, and how teamwork could make or break a mission. She also discovered that competition was inevitable. Some cadets resented her diligence, her quiet intelligence, or the way she excelled in simulations. Yet Emma remained focused, remembering the lessons of 7A and high school. Ridicule and envy were challenges to overcome, not distractions to derail her. One of Emma's most significant early lessons came during flight simulation exercises. In one scenario, she was tasked with navigating a complex airspace under pressure, avoiding simulated threats and managing instrument failures simultaneously. She made a critical error during the exercise, misjudging a turn and nearly colliding with a virtual aircraft. The instructor's gaze was sharp. "Cadet Carter, hesitation in the real cockpit could cost lives. Analyze, adapt, and act decisively." Emma's face burned with embarrassment, but she absorbed the feedback with determination. That night, she replayed the simulation repeatedly, dissecting every choice, every misstep, and finding ways to improve. By the next session, she executed the scenario flawlessly, earning quiet nods of approval from the instructors. Emma also learned to navigate the intangible aspects of military life: protocol, hierarchy, and communication. She memorized ranks, learned proper reporting procedures, and adapted to the strict discipline that governed every interaction. This was not simply about obedience. It was about internalizing responsibility, situational awareness, and accountability, qualities essential for anyone in the cockpit of an F-22, where split-second decisions could mean the difference between success and disaster. Outside the classroom and training grounds, Emma sought mentorship wherever she could find it. She shadowed experienced cadets during technical exercises, asked questions about their strategies, and observed how they handled stress and uncertainty. She reached out to retired pilots, listening to stories about aerial combat, emergency landings, and the unrelenting demands of military service. Each story, each lesson, became a brick in the foundation of her ambition. The road ahead was long, but she was building the skills, mindset, and resilience required to traverse it. Despite the challenges, Emma found moments of triumph. The first time she successfully completed a solo flight simulation without error, she felt a surge of pride that no high school award had ever matched. The hum of the virtual engines, the precise control of the aircraft, and the flawless execution of maneuvers validated years of effort, study, and persistence. In that moment, she understood why she had endured ridicule, rejection, and struggle. Preparation and patience were the keys to transforming dreams into reality. Yet military training was as much a test of character as skill. Emma faced moments of self-doubt, questioning whether she was strong enough, disciplined enough, or capable of living up to the expectations she had set for herself. During particularly grueling exercises, when her muscles ached, her mind raced with calculations, and her peers seemed to perform effortlessly, Emma felt the familiar whisper of uncertainty. But she remembered the early days in 7A, the quiet laughter of classmates, the rejection letters, and the mentors who believed in her potential. She forced herself forward, step by step, breath by breath, recognizing that perseverance was not innate. It was a choice made repeatedly, day after day. By the end of her first semester, Emma had begun to earn recognition. Instructors took note of her precision in simulations, her diligence in completing assignments, and her ability to lead small teams during tactical exercises. While she was still one of the younger and less experienced cadets, she had proven that she could meet the physical, mental, and emotional demands of the academy. More importantly, she had demonstrated an unwavering commitment to her goals, earning the quiet respect of peers who had initially underestimated her. Evenings often found her alone in the library or the simulator lab, working late into the night. She refined navigation strategies, studied flight mechanics, and practiced emergency procedures repeatedly. While others attended social events or sports games, Emma immersed herself in the work required to reach the cockpit. Her solitude was not loneliness but purpose, a conscious choice to invest in her future. Emma Carter's first steps in the military had been arduous, filled with exhaustion, self-doubt, and steep learning curves. But they had also been illuminating. She discovered the limits of her physical and mental endurance, the importance of discipline and preparation, and the value of persistence in the face of relentless challenge. Each early success, each hard-learned lesson, and each moment of quiet triumph confirmed one undeniable truth. She was on the path she had always dreamed of, and nothing, mockery, failure, or fear, would deter her. By the time she left the academy for her first supervised flight in an actual trainer jet, Emma carried with her more than textbooks and simulations. She carried resilience, focus, and an unshakable belief that she belonged in the sky. Her dream, once mocked in the halls of 7A, was no longer a distant fantasy. It was tangible, earned, and waiting for her to take hold of the controls, soar into the clouds, and prove to herself and the world that determination, courage, and skill could elevate even the most underestimated cadet to heights unimaginable. By her second year at the Air Force Academy, Emma Carter had begun to feel the subtle shift from cadet to pilot in training. The early days of grueling drills, endless simulations, and mental tests had forged a foundation of endurance and knowledge. Now the challenge was different. It was about proving herself in the air, earning the respect of instructors and peers, and demonstrating that her determination translated into action, not just theory. Flight school was an entirely new world. The sound of real jet engines replaced the hum of simulators. The vibration of a moving aircraft under her fingertips made every previous experience suddenly tangible. Emma had prepared for this moment for years, yet nothing could fully convey the mix of fear, excitement, and responsibility she felt as she donned her flight suit and helmet for the first time. Today was not just another simulation. It was her first real attempt to fly a high-performance trainer jet with an instructor observing her every move. Her instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, was a veteran pilot known for his precision and no-nonsense approach. "Emma," he said as they stepped into the cockpit, "the sky doesn't forgive mistakes, but it rewards preparation. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and above all, stay calm." Emma nodded, gripping the controls, feeling the weight of responsibility settle across her shoulders. She had imagined this moment countless times, running through procedures in her head, memorizing every checklist, every possible scenario. Now she had to make it real. The takeoff was tense. Emma's hands moved instinctively, controlling throttle and rudder while monitoring instruments. The instructor remained silent, only offering occasional nods or corrections. As the jet lifted off the runway, the roar of the engines filled her ears, the horizon stretching endlessly before her. She felt the delicate balance of lift and thrust, the subtle adjustments of ailerons and rudder, and the immense power beneath her fingertips. Every maneuver was a test of coordination, focus, and confidence. Emma's first loop was flawless, a small victory that sent a surge of adrenaline through her. She executed turns, climbs, and dives with precision, anticipating the aircraft's reactions before they even happened. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, usually reserved in praise, finally spoke. "Well done, Carter. You've got the instincts, but remember, instincts alone aren't enough. Discipline and calculation make the great pilots." Emma nodded, committing every word to memory. In her mind, she replayed each maneuver, analyzing what had gone right and what could be improved. It was during these early flights that Emma began to earn her call sign, a symbolic rite of passage in military aviation, marking a pilot's identity within the squadron. The nickname often reflected personality, habits, or a memorable incident, and it carried weight, respect, and camaraderie. For Emma, the process began quietly. Her instructors and peers observed her keen attention to detail, her calm under pressure, and her willingness to learn. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging training exercise simulating an aerial engagement, Emma executed a perfect intercept maneuver. The simulated scenario was intense: multiple targets, complex navigation, and strict time constraints. Many cadets struggled, but Emma's calculated decisions and precise control impressed everyone observing from the ground. As she returned to base, a fellow cadet, Marcus, grinned and said, "You handled that like a hawk." "We'll call you Hawk from now on." Emma laughed, partly embarrassed, partly honored. The nickname stuck, whispered among peers at first, and eventually adopted formally as her call sign. Earning a call sign was more than just a playful moniker. It was a badge of recognition. It meant that she was no longer the quiet cadet who studied endlessly in the library or practiced in simulators alone. She was now someone who had demonstrated skill, courage, and reliability under pressure. It was proof that her perseverance had tangible results, that her knowledge and instincts could translate into action when it mattered most. With her call sign officially recognized, Emma began to feel a new sense of identity within the squadron. The other pilots, who had once been skeptical of her abilities, now sought her input during training missions. She became a trusted member of the team, coordinating with other cadets on tactical exercises, sharing insights from her extensive research, and learning to anticipate the actions of both allies and adversaries in complex flight scenarios. Her voice, once drowned out by laughter in middle school, now carried authority and respect in the cockpit. Despite the recognition, Emma remained humble. She understood that a call sign was not a guarantee of excellence. It was a responsibility to uphold. She continued to practice relentlessly, reviewing flight recordings, studying new maneuvers, and analyzing technical manuals to expand her expertise. Her days were long and exhausting, filled with early mornings, physical training, academic work, and countless hours in simulators or aircraft. Yet she embraced the rigor, knowing that mastery was earned through persistence and diligence. The camaraderie of the squadron also brought unexpected lessons. Emma observed how trust, communication, and teamwork were just as important as individual skill. During group exercises, she learned to coordinate strategies, anticipate her teammates' actions, and adjust her maneuvers in real time. Mistakes were inevitable, but each one became an opportunity to learn and improve. She discovered that leadership was not about being the loudest or the fastest. It was about reliability, insight, and the ability to inspire confidence in others. By the end of her second year, Emma had transformed. She was no longer the nervous cadet stepping into the simulator for the first time. She was Hawk, a pilot in training recognized for skill, intelligence, and composure under pressure. The call sign was a symbol of her growth, a tangible acknowledgement of years of preparation, study, and persistence. More importantly, it was a reminder that the ridicule she had endured in 7A and the rejections she faced in high school were not markers of failure, but stepping stones on her journey. Emma's story spread quietly among the cadets, a reminder of what determination could achieve. Younger trainees looked up to her, seeking advice and mentorship, inspired by her ability to combine intellect, skill, and resilience. Her instructors saw in her a rare combination of talent and humility, a pilot who could excel individually but also elevate the entire squadron. The nickname Hawk came to signify not just skill, but vision, precision, and focus, a perfect reflection of the cadet who had once been laughed at for dreaming big. Even in the quiet moments, as she sat in her dorm room reviewing flight charts or reading technical manuals, Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The journey had been long and arduous, but she had begun to see the fruits of her labor. The laughter of her classmates in 7A was a distant memory, replaced by the roar of engines, the camaraderie of fellow pilots, and the unmistakable thrill of the sky. Each flight, each maneuver, each successful simulation was a reaffirmation of her commitment, a reminder that perseverance, courage, and dedication could transform the seemingly impossible into reality. Emma Carter had earned her call sign, and with it, a new chapter of her journey began. The skis were no longer a dream, they were a proving ground, a canvas for skill, discipline, and ambition. And as Hawk, she was ready to soar higher than ever before, leaving behind the doubts of the past and embracing the challenges and triumphs that awaited her in the demanding world of fighter aviation. By the time Emma Carter, now known across the squadron as Hawk, transitioned from training simulations to her first real operational flights, the stakes had changed dramatically. No longer were mistakes confined to a virtual world or judged only by instructors. Every decision, every maneuver, had consequences that could ripple through a team of pilots, a mission, or even national security. The thrill she had once felt in simulators now mingled with an acute awareness of responsibility, a weight she carried with both pride and focus. Her first deployment assignment was a multi-aircraft exercise in a restricted training airspace designed to simulate real-world combat scenarios. Emma flew alongside seasoned pilots, veterans of exercises that had pushed the limits of aerial coordination and tactical strategy. The F-22 jets glinted in the morning sun as they taxied down the runway, the roar of engines vibrating through her bones. As she checked her instruments and communicated with her squadron, Emma felt a familiar mix of nerves and excitement. But unlike the first day in flight school, fear did not paralyze her. She had prepared for this, and she trusted her training. The exercise began with a high-speed intercept scenario. Enemy drones, controlled remotely to simulate hostile aircraft, entered the airspace, forcing pilots to respond instantaneously. Emma assessed the situation, noting the formation of her fellow pilots and calculating optimal angles for intercept. Her fingers moved across the controls with precision, executing maneuvers she had practiced countless times in simulators. Every adjustment was deliberate, every decision measured. The difference now was consequence. A wrong move could lead to collision or failure of the exercise. Within moments, Emma's instincts, honed through years of simulation, study, and preparation, proved invaluable. She predicted the trajectory of one of the enemy drones and intercepted it with precision, coordinating with a fellow pilot to neutralize the simulated threat. The maneuver was clean, efficient, and strategically sound. On the radio, her instructor's voice crackled with approval. "Hawk, excellent situational awareness. That's the kind of thinking that keeps pilots alive." Emma's heart raced with exhilaration. This was validation in its purest form, a confirmation that her preparation, discipline, and persistence were not only sufficient, they were exceptional. Over the next several weeks, Emma's reputation in the squadron grew. She excelled in night exercises, formation flying, and complex navigation challenges. More importantly, she developed an uncanny ability to remain calm under pressure. While other pilots occasionally hesitated or second-guessed their decisions, Hawk maintained composure, analyzing situations methodically and acting decisively. The instructors noted it. The fellow pilots noticed it. Slowly, the whispers of skepticism that had once followed her from school corridors disappeared, replaced by respect, trust, and even admiration. Yet proving herself was not solely about skill. It was about leadership. During one particularly challenging simulation, an inexperienced pilot in her flight formation made a critical error, veering dangerously close to another aircraft. Emma immediately assessed the situation, adjusted her own trajectory, and guided her teammate via radio, calmly issuing instructions while ensuring her own safety and that of the squadron. The crisis passed without incident, and her instructor later praised her decisiveness. "Hawk, you've demonstrated what makes a leader in the air. You protected your team while maintaining mission integrity, an invaluable skill for any pilot." Real-world missions followed similar patterns, albeit with higher stakes. Exercises with allied forces introduced unpredictability, different communication protocols, varying aircraft capabilities, and the need to integrate seamlessly with pilots who had vastly different experiences. Emma adapted quickly, leveraging her analytical skills, technical knowledge, and ability to read both aircraft and human behavior. She began to anticipate potential problems before they arose, making adjustments that optimized formation efficiency and mission success. Emma also faced moments that tested her mental and emotional limits. During a cross-country navigation exercise, unexpected weather conditions forced her to rely entirely on instruments, navigation charts, and her instincts. Lightning flashes illuminated turbulent clouds, and gusts buffeted the aircraft unpredictably. Pilots around her made small errors, forcing rapid recalibration of positions and altitude. Emma felt her pulse quicken but remained focused. She recalculated wind drift, adjusted her heading, and guided her formation safely through the storm. By the time they landed, her fellow pilots regarded her with a new level of awe. The instructor's words echoed in her mind. "Hawk, that was textbook composure under extreme conditions." These missions also brought opportunities for mentorship, a role Emma embraced with humility. Junior pilots began seeking her guidance, asking questions about maneuvers, communication protocols, and tactical strategy. She explained concepts clearly, demonstrating the same patience and encouragement she had learned from mentors during her own early years. Through teaching, she reinforced her own understanding and strengthened the bonds within her squadron, fostering a culture of collaboration and trust. Recognition came gradually, subtle but undeniable. During debriefings, instructors cited her decisions as exemplary, highlighting her as a model for efficiency, foresight, and calm under pressure. Fellow pilots who had once doubted her abilities began to consult her before critical maneuvers, valuing her insight and judgment. Emma felt a quiet satisfaction, not the ego-driven pride of seeking applause, but the deep contentment of seeing persistence, discipline, and focus rewarded. Yet the journey was not without setbacks. During one high-intensity air combat exercise, Emma misjudged the speed of an opposing aircraft, allowing it to escape the simulated engagement. The instructor's critique was firm. Even the best pilots make mistakes. Learn, adapt, and don't let it shake your confidence. Emma internalized the lesson immediately. She analyzed the error, adjusted her approach, and applied the correction in subsequent exercises. For her, failure was never a permanent mark of inadequacy. It was a roadmap to improvement. By the end of her first operational year, Hawk had become a respected and formidable pilot in the squadron. She had proven that the laughter of 7th grade, the skepticism of high school, and the rigorous demands of the academy were all part of a journey that had shaped her into someone capable of extraordinary skill and leadership. Every mission flown, every maneuver executed, and every lifelike simulation completed reinforced the truth she had long known. Talent alone was not enough. Only determination, preparation, and resilience could transform potential into excellence. Emma's story began to circulate quietly beyond her squadron. Instructors cited her as an example for new cadets, highlighting her ability to combine technical skill, tactical foresight, and leadership. Fellow pilots referred to her as Hawk, not merely because of her call sign, but because of her sharp instincts, vigilance, and ability to see the bigger picture in high-pressure scenarios. It was a recognition that extended far beyond any one mission, a testament to her growth, dedication, and unwavering commitment to her dream. And yet, even as accolades accumulated, Emma remained focused on what lay ahead. She knew that each flight, each exercise, and each mission was an opportunity to refine her skills, to strengthen her judgment, and to prepare for challenges that were even more demanding. The sky was no longer a dream. It was her proving ground, a place where preparation met opportunity, and where persistence turned potential into mastery. Emma Carter had moved far beyond the corridors of 7A, the ridicule of classmates, and the doubts of skeptics. She had become Hawk, a pilot respected by peers and instructors alike, whose determination and skill had earned her a place in the skies where only the best could operate. And as she prepared for the next mission, the roar of her F-22 engines filled her with a sense of purpose and possibility. Every maneuver, every decision, every challenge ahead was a chance to continue proving herself, to show, beyond any doubt, that the kid who had once been laughed at could not only fly but excel, soar, and inspire others to follow her lead. After years of relentless effort, countless hours in flight simulators, grueling physical training, and real operational missions, Emma Carter, now widely known by her call sign, Hawk, found herself pausing for the first time to truly reflect on the journey that had brought her here. Sitting in the quiet of the squadron briefing room, reviewing mission reports and flight logs, she allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. The hum of the base's activity continued outside, but inside, Emma felt a calm that had eluded her throughout much of her training. Her mind traveled back to the hallways of Jefferson Middle School, to 7A, where she had been laughed at for doodling fighter jets instead of following the latest trends. She remembered the whispers, the sideways glances, and the stinging comments that once seemed insurmountable. At the time, those moments had felt like barriers she could never overcome. Yet now, sitting in a room surrounded by the very machinery, procedures, and colleagues she had dreamed about, those memories felt distant, less like obstacles, and more like the first building blocks of her resilience. High school came next in her recollection. She thought of the rejection letters from summer aviation programs, the harsh critiques at science fairs, and the isolation she had endured while pouring herself into study and simulation. Each setback, she realized, had been a lesson in perseverance. Each no had quietly shaped her character, teaching her patience, focus, and the ability to learn from failure. Without those early challenges, the meticulous precision she now displayed in high-speed maneuvers and tactical operations might never have been possible. Emma reflected on the academy, the rigorous physical training, the demanding academic coursework, the endless simulations, and the emotional strain of proving herself among highly talented peers. The first flight simulations that had terrified her, the mistakes she had made, the instructor's firm critiques, all of it had culminated in the pilot she had become. She could still remember the sting of being corrected mid-flight, the frustration of failing to execute a maneuver perfectly, and the quiet nights spent replaying errors and rehearsing corrections. Those experiences, once agonizing, were now the pillars of her expertise. The transition from trainee to operational pilot had been the next crucible. Emma recalled her first real flights, the roar of the F-22s engines, the feeling of altitude pressing against her chest, and the immense focus required to manage both the aircraft and the mission objectives simultaneously. She remembered guiding fellow pilots through simulated crises, coordinating intercepts, and facing complex scenarios that demanded split-second decision-making. Each successful mission, each perfectly executed maneuver, was proof not just of her skill but of her growth as a leader and as a professional. Recognition had followed, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Instructors praised her precision, calm under pressure, and ability to lead, while fellow pilots gradually sought her guidance, respecting her insights and decision-making. Her call sign, Hawk, had become synonymous with reliability, foresight, and tactical intelligence. Unlike the teasing nickname of her past, this moniker carried weight, respect, and a sense of identity she had earned through skill and perseverance. Awards and honors began to accumulate, though Emma's pride in them was measured, not boastful. She received commendations for her performance in exercises and simulations, acknowledging both her technical skill and her leadership qualities. In ceremonies, she watched other cadets and pilots receive accolades, recognizing in each of them the same qualities of persistence and discipline she had cultivated within herself. For Emma, these moments were less about personal glory and more about validation of years of effort and the realization that she had turned her dreams into tangible achievements. Even as recognition grew, Emma remained reflective. She understood that her journey had been shaped as much by failures as by successes. She thought of the mistakes she had made, misjudged maneuvers, moments of hesitation, and early setbacks in training, and realized that those moments had taught her resilience, humility, and the value of preparation. Each challenge had been a stepping stone, each critique a tool for improvement, and each failure a teacher. Without them, she would never have earned the trust and respect of her peers, or the right to call herself a pilot. Emma also recognized the broader significance of her journey. She thought of young girls and cadets who might one day walk in her footsteps, who might doubt themselves in classrooms, playgrounds, or training grounds. Her story, she realized, was more than personal. It was an example, a proof that persistence, discipline, and courage could overcome doubt and skepticism. The girl who had once been laughed at in 7A had become a symbol of what determination and focus could achieve. Her reflection was not only personal but professional. Reviewing her own missions, she considered how far she had come in mastering the aircraft, understanding tactical scenarios, and leading teams under pressure. She analyzed her decision-making, identifying strengths and areas for continued growth. Even with accolades and respect, Emma knew the journey was ongoing. The skis would always demand vigilance, skill, and continuous improvement, and she was committed to meeting that challenge at every turn. Family played a central role in this reflection. Emma thought of her parents, who had nurtured her curiosity and provided unwavering support despite the skepticism and doubt she had faced elsewhere. She remembered her father teaching her about flight systems, her mother encouraging her studies, and both of them instilling in her a sense of confidence and resilience. Every achievement she had earned was a shared triumph with those who had believed in her when others had not. Even as she relished her accomplishments, Emma remained grounded. She understood that recognition was not an endpoint but a milestone. There would be more missions, more exercises, and new challenges awaiting her. The lessons of humility, focus, and perseverance would continue to guide her as she advanced in her career. She also knew that the real measure of success lay not in medals or accolades, but in the ability to lead, inspire, and uphold the values that had carried her from the laughter of 7A to the roar of F-22 engines. In moments of quiet reflection, Emma felt gratitude for the challenges that had strengthened her, for the mentors who had guided her, for the family who had supported her, and for the opportunities she had earned. She realized that her journey was not defined solely by the title Hawk or the recognition she had received, but by the accumulation of effort, perseverance, and courage that had made her worthy of both. And in that reflection, Emma Carter also found clarity. She knew her story was just one chapter in a lifelong pursuit of excellence. The call sign on her helmet, the respect of her peers, and the success of her missions were not final destinations. They were stepping stones toward even greater achievements. She understood that her journey would continue, each flight offering new lessons, each mission testing her skill, and each challenge reaffirming the resilience that had carried her from a laughed-at seventh grader to a respected pilot. As Emma stood outside, watching an F-22 streak across the horizon in the evening sky, she allowed herself a rare smile. She thought of the girl in 7A who had been mocked for her passion and ambition. That girl, she realized, had never truly been defeated. She had simply been preparing for a future that few could imagine. And now, standing on the precipice of possibility, Hawk understood the full magnitude of her journey. The laughter of the past had been replaced by the roar of engines, the doubt of others transformed into respect, and the dreams she had nurtured quietly for years had become reality. Emma Carter had earned her place among the skis. She had earned her call sign, the recognition of peers, and the satisfaction of knowing she had never abandoned her dreams. And most importantly, she had become an inspiration, a living testament to what courage, persistence, and unwavering determination could achieve. By the time Emma Carter, call sign Hawk, had earned recognition as one of the most skilled and disciplined pilots in her squadron, she realized that her journey was no longer just about personal achievement. The years of relentless training, setbacks, and triumphs had not only shaped her as a pilot, but also as a mentor, a leader, and a symbol for those who dared to dream beyond the limitations imposed by others. She began to understand that her legacy would be defined not just by missions flown or medals earned, but by the inspiration she provided to the next generation of pilots. Her first opportunity to mentor came unexpectedly. A group of young cadets arrived at her squadron for an observational tour. They were nervous, awestruck by the jets on the tarmac and the disciplined routines of the pilots. Among them, she saw echoes of herself, wide-eyed, curious, eager, and unsure if they belonged. One young girl, barely 15, clutched a small notebook filled with sketches of aircraft and technical notes. Hawk recognized the intensity, the quiet determination that had defined her own childhood. Emma approached the group with a calm but commanding presence. "Welcome to the squadron," she said, her voice steady yet warm. "You're here because you're interested in aviation and because someone saw potential in you. But potential alone isn't enough. You have to work, practice, fail, and learn. You have to believe in yourself, even when others doubt you." The words flowed naturally, drawing from her own experiences of ridicule in 7A and the countless challenges that had shaped her. The young cadets listened intently, asking questions about training, the challenges of flight, and how she had earned her call sign. Emma shared stories from her early days, the hours in simulators, the rejection letters, the mistakes in flight exercises, and the eventual victories that followed. She emphasized that skill was built over time, through persistence and resilience, not through shortcuts or luck. "Every pilot you see here started somewhere," she explained. "Some of us were mocked for our passions, some doubted ourselves. But the difference between those who succeed and those who don't is simple. We never stopped trying." Mentorship quickly became a central part of her life. Emma dedicated time to coaching cadets in simulators, explaining tactical maneuvers, and walking them through complex navigation exercises. She taught them to trust their instincts while relying on rigorous preparation, emphasizing that discipline and adaptability were equally important in the air. More than that, she worked to instill confidence, particularly in cadets who struggled with self-doubt or skepticism from peers. Emma remembered too well the isolation of her younger years and sought to create a supportive environment where curiosity and ambition were encouraged, not ridiculed. One of her most rewarding experiences involved the girl with the notebook, Maya, as Emma later learned her name. Maya reminded her so much of herself at 13, quiet, observant, and brimming with knowledge but unsure of her place. Over the course of months, Hawk mentored her personally, reviewing flight simulations, teaching the intricacies of aerodynamics, and helping her prepare for her first solo flight. Emma encouraged Maya to keep meticulous notes, analyze mistakes, and trust in her own capacity to learn. The day Maya successfully completed her first solo training flight was a defining moment for both of them. As the aircraft landed smoothly on the tarmac, Maya's face radiated a mixture of exhilaration, pride, and disbelief. Hawk approached, offering a firm handshake and a warm smile. "You did it," she said simply. "All those hours of practice, all the patience, all the mistakes, you turned them into success. Remember this feeling. It's what happens when you refuse to give up." Emma's influence extended beyond technical instruction. She taught cadets about resilience, leadership, and character, the intangible qualities that separated competent pilots from exceptional ones. She shared her philosophy that failure was not the opposite of success, but a crucial component of growth. "Every setback is a lesson," she told them. "Every challenge is an opportunity to improve. The sky doesn't care about excuses. It rewards preparation, focus, and courage." As her reputation as a mentor grew, so did the recognition of her achievements. Emma was invited to speak at aviation conferences, school outreach programs, and cadet workshops, where she shared her journey from a ridiculed middle school student to an accomplished fighter pilot. Her story resonated, particularly with young girls and aspiring pilots who faced doubt and societal expectations. She became a living example that barriers could be overcome, that persistence mattered, and that ambition was not limited by age, gender, or circumstance. The impact of her mentorship became evident in subtle but powerful ways. Cadets she trained went on to excel in simulations and exercises, earning recognition themselves. Some had initially lacked confidence, but under Hawk's guidance, they developed the skills and courage to perform at levels they hadn't thought possible. The joy Emma felt was profound, not in accolades or awards, but in witnessing others realize their potential. It was a fulfillment she could never have anticipated when she first dreamed of the skis as a lonely seventh grader. Even in her operational duties, Emma applied the lessons of mentorship. She led squadrons with precision, guided younger pilots through tactical exercises, and ensured that her teams learned from every mission, whether successful or flawed. Her approach emphasized collaboration over competition, support over criticism, and learning over ego. The squadron thrived under her leadership, and she found that the qualities that had made her a respected pilot, discipline, foresight, and adaptability, were amplified when shared with others. Emma also reflected on the broader responsibility of being a role model. She knew that her journey could inspire not just those within the military, but anyone who had ever been underestimated or doubted. She made herself available for outreach programs, speaking to schools about science, technology, and aviation, emphasizing perseverance and self-belief. Each story she shared, the ridicule in 7A, the rejections in high school, the grueling academy training, was met with rapt attention, and often with tears or smiles of recognition. Young listeners saw in her a proof that dreams, no matter how unlikely, could be achieved through determination. Years into her career, Emma Carter fully embraced the dual identity of pilot and mentor. She still soared through the skis in F-22 jets, mastering maneuvers with unmatched skill, but she also invested equally in the people around her. Every cadet she trained, every pilot she guided, and every young person she inspired was part of her ongoing legacy. Hawk was no longer just a call sign. It was a symbol of vision, leadership, and the power of perseverance. As she stood on the tarmac one evening, watching a group of cadets prepare for a night exercise, Emma allowed herself a moment of reflection. The roar of engines, the precision of the formation, and the gleam of determination in the cadet's eyes reminded her of her own path. She had gone from being the laughed-at kid in 7A to a respected pilot and mentor. The obstacles she had faced, mockery, rejection, failure, were no longer sources of doubt but the foundation upon which she had built her achievements. Emma smiled quietly. She realized that the greatest reward of her journey was not the medals, the call sign, or even the missions completed. It was the opportunity to give back, to inspire, and to prove that determination, courage, and persistence could lift anyone beyond the limits imposed by the world. And in that realization, she understood something profound. The sky, once a distant dream, had become both her proving ground and her gift to the next generation. Emma Carter had come full circle. From a middle school girl mocked for her passion, to a high school student rejected for her ambition, to a cadet and pilot earning respect and accolades, she had finally become a beacon for those who dared to dream. And as Hawk, she knew that her mission was far from over, not in the air, and not in the hearts of those she inspired. The sky would always demand skill, focus, and courage, but Emma also knew that the world below demanded hope, mentorship, and belief, and she was ready to give it all.